What's going on, macro perspective peeps? Today I am super excited to be talking with our special guest. But before we get to our guest, make sure you guys like, comment, share, and get to talk about the pod here. We're trying to build out a community with Marcos and I and everyone else as well. But to get to our guest, guys, I'm super humbled, super just honored to have Carter Good with us. Carter Good is an online health and wellness coach, a weight loss coach, and he has a crazy story of losing like over 100 plus pounds, and he's helped others do it as well. And he's had, a striving business in the coaching world. So, with that being said, Carter, would you mind just kind of introducing yourself, a little bit about yourself, where you're at, and your kind of, where you've been, how you've gotten into this whole health and fitness realm, and kind of just start the conversation like that, my man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you guys again for having me on. Excited to be here. So I'll kind of give you the quicker explanation, and I'm sure we can dive into certain aspects. But kind of like you said, my journey sort of got started in this industry and with fitness and even with the business side with my own kind of personal journey. So at my heaviest, I was like over 300 pounds, 305 pounds, and I lost, I think the most weight I ever lost was around 145 pounds, from what I remember. And obviously, there's a whole story within that journey, and even afterwards that I always like to share with people about like how do you sort of transition back into to living your life whenever you've lost like 145 pounds, and how do you keep that off, right? And so that got me down the path of just getting obviously very interested in fitness. And honestly, I was always very interested in like the psychology side of like, relationship with food and with self and with fitness in general. And it's always sort of what I gravitated towards. And so I started to, I was in college at the time, and I started creating, content, just around like what's helped me, and like, I was following all the guys like Layne Norton and Alan Aragon and all these different fitness people, right? And so I started to post content, seeing what a lot of other people were doing, and from doing that, I got invited to join an internship in Florida for like for a fitness company. But doing more of the back end marketing stuff for it. So I actually dropped out of college. I was in my junior year, moved down to Florida to do this thing. I was there for about 6 to 8 months, and then I ended up coming back and moving back in with my parents at the time, and continued to post more, and things started to pick up. I started to gain a bigger following. I started to do coaching in the gym and then also online, and I made kind of a big switch to online, and I've done that for since then. I've been doing one-on-one coaching online, and in that whole area, I've tried different business models in the space and everything, but it's all sort of been centered around some form of coaching, and that's kind of where we're at today.
Man, what a freaking journey. Could you cover like the journey of being a coach, right? Like, how did you work with your clients? Like we kind of alluded previously chatting, like, yeah, what was that coaching model like? Did you coach, you're talking about one-on-one right now, but did you have group coaching? Were you actually personal training in person, or was it just always
Yeah.
online? How did that journey kind of start with the online space of coaching, and how did that look like? How did it evolve, and how is it now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think like whenever I got started with coaching, I mean, it wasn't super early, but it was, 2016, 2017. So it was still like a
Mm,
very early age of the online coaching space. I mean, I did some in-person training in the gym. It was just at my like local gym, and it wasn't anything like I kind of knew from the beginning it wasn't something that I loved doing. But it definitely was like a good experience in doing that. But I always knew I wanted to shift to the online space, partly from a personal perspective, just from like a career perspective. Having come from more of a marketing background, I enjoyed like I've read the 4 Hour Work Week. I'm very big into like the
Tim
on my
Ferriss
laptop
side.
on the beach. Yeah. Yeah, which is like the funny joke is how like working on your laptop on a beach is actually the worst thing ever because it's too bright and there's sand everywhere. But I've always been very interested in that lifestyle component of business. But also too, I feel like, especially for my clientele and the people who follow me, I feel like there's just a level of um, just more mentality and like psychological coaching that's needed more than
Yeah.
anything else. And I always make a joke whenever I'm like, bringing on a new client. that it's cheesy to say it this way, but it's kind of less like personal training and more like fitness life coaching. Because, we all know, like you guys know, like the information is very simple, right? It's applying it. And that's where there can be unique differences and understanding like the core motivations of people and stuff. So, um, I would say that my coaching has definitely evolved from, I would say in the beginning, it was a lot more by the books in terms of like, based on research and this is what's optimal and this, and this. But I'm also working with 30 to 40-year-old people who have no interest in trying to maximize muscle hypertrophy or trying to like, make sure that their timing of things is perfect or need to optimize. And so I would say a lot of my coaching has shifted further away from making sure that everything is optimal based on science and more what's optimal for that person. Because
Mm-hmm.
my real mission when I work with clients is that when they do leave my coaching program, they've obviously achieved like a physical result that they've set for themselves. But I really do have this desire to like get them in a place where they don't have to think about this area of their life anymore. And they kind
Yeah.
of have figured it out enough for them to where if they decided to go more into it, they could, but they don't need to. Because I think that's where 99.9% of people are, right? They're not following all these people on social media and trying to like subscribe to all these research reviews and things. And so I've really put a lot of focus on helping each individual person build out their own sort of personal plan with how fitness fits into their life, so that they obviously get the benefits that come from that, without always feeling like they're kind of chasing something, if that makes sense.
Man, yeah, it does because you want them to leave with something they didn't have before, which is the education, right? Like, I feel like when you
Hmm.
said that, it's like that's like my core motivator. But you mentioning the marketing side, like you can't really sell that. It's a harder sell. Like we're going to educate you to do this, right? And
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was just gonna say like that's I would say has been like a thing in the space too, even as like a marketer too. Like I feel like there's been a huge shift recently to where like there's so much value in more of the coaching aspect, I think, of the space, right? Because like you can sell programs, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I like to run challenges and things, but from the perspective of like, this is more of a kickstart than it is like you're gonna get from A to B or whatever. But no, you're 100% right. It's like, I think that the way that the industry has shifted is sort of away from just generic, like, hey, I'm going to tell you what to do. Maybe you'll do it, maybe you won't, but you'll maybe
Mm-hmm.
lose 20 pounds and then you'll end up, gaining it back, or, unless you get addicted to it, you're not going to have success, to more of like a holistic approach where it's, really understanding like all of the aspects that go into making this transformation beyond just like, you know, losing fat, right? And building some muscle too.
yeah, it's like that self worth thing where you're in they sign
Mm-hmm.
up with you because obviously like they see a transformation, it resonated more than likely, or they found a piece of content that is
Hmm.
engaging enough to bring them into your like ecosystem. And then your content, which obviously crushes, because back when I was like starting out coaching, I'm seeing your stuff. I was like, I aspire to get to that. Like, how the hell is he doing this? And I'm like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming he has the same tools that I do, and I suck at it, which will lead me into my question. But what you mentioned though of like the the the, the evolution of like your own like personal development and arc that's going on simultaneous to the people that you're coaching. You're a 20 something year old kid coaching 40-year-old people. Did you ever feel like the life experience, like as you've evolved, as like now showing up in your coaching to a new level that you're like everything's more relatable, or you just understand like at a deeper level at this point?
Absolutely. I would say, man, it's like, and that's where. So what's funny is, so like taking a step back, like my initial, you know, business model of how I would help people was one-on-one coaching, and that's what I did pretty much up until I would say like June of 2021, um, or 2022, probably one of the two. But that's whenever I, doing one-on-one coaching, but I was burning out of it, honestly, and I didn't really know why at the time. Um, and a lot of it was just based on, just like, okay, people wanted to lose fat, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. And like a lot of the coaching was built around that. And I think I just like burn out just how most people would burn out, having done it for at that point for 4 years, right? Like doing one on, and I also at the time too, just from a business perspective, didn't have the greatest systems. I didn't have very good like boundaries, I guess, in place as a coach, right? And so I would really burn out in doing it. And then I think also the life experience stuff as well. Like, I think that at that time when I first was getting started with coaching, I didn't really take into account how important, somebody's like all the other aspects of somebody's life were, especially with like relationships and things like that. And to be honest with you, like up until I would say probably I was 23 or 24 years old, I didn't go through a lot of pretty transformative things in my life. I mean, I definitely had like, done whatever, but I had a really, great upbringing. But even after losing weight, like I didn't, outside of just like trying to build a business, which is probably likely why I had a lot of success, was because like my entire life just revolved around doing this one thing. But to be honest, I feel like I didn't have a lot of life experiences now looking back, because between 24 to where we're at now, like, just going through multiple breakups, like moving, living on my own, sort of becoming an adult, I guess I would say, has shifted a lot of how I work with people, and a lot of like not only the fitness advice I give them, but also how I talk with them. And so what's been funny is, so I mentioned before we went live, like this time last year I had a pretty huge team. I mean, I had like 7 assistant coaches, like a sales team, all this stuff, right? And I was doing it thinking that that's where I like wanted to go. And it turns out that I hated it, because I hate meetings, and it just wasn't for me necessarily. And so I started bringing on clients again, just because it was, it's something that I knew how to do and I felt comfortable doing it. And I was like, okay, let me do this for a while, and then I can kind of choose my next path. But what's been really interesting is, as I've shifted back into it, I feel like just the growth I've had in like the 2 to 3 years that I wasn't coaching has like significantly improved like my client results and just my enjoyment, I think, of coaching, because I just feel like I have more to offer now, I guess, in beyond fitness than I did at the time. And so I would say that it's evolved from like feeling less like it was me trying to like create results for people from like a physical standpoint, to being much more like a life coaching type of a thing, where like really helping people create like transformation and building confidence in themselves, and to make decisions in their lives, right? And I mean, I'm sure you guys have had experiences where, I'm not sure if you guys do coaching or whatever, but like, I've had people who have like, lost weight working with me, but then they also like asked for that promotion, right? Or they like left a toxic relationship that wasn't serving them, right?
Yeah.
And kind of being in the position where you can be online, it's, obviously I don't overstep myself, but because of the way it's set up, it's like, I feel like there's a element to it where I can offer perspective on things that maybe you couldn't do on a floor at Lifetime Gym, right? With somebody,
Yeah.
from a company standpoint. And so I feel like it's just a lot more real. It's a lot more raw. And it's been a much more enjoyable process. And so I don't think I ever would have hopped back into this if it wasn't realizing that the model I was building wasn't for me. But as I've gotten back into it, I've enjoyed it a lot more. And it's even kind of changed the trajectory of kind of like where I want to go with things,
Yeah.
moving forward too, with business.
Well, you mentioned that like you were maybe you were enticed by the money. Having a team helps you scale, and scaling means more potential
Oh
earners.
yeah.
And you're like, dope. Like I want this nut, so to speak, right? Like everybody wants that.
Yeah.
Only to come to find out, you're like, damn, I'm working way too much. I can't enjoy anything that's going on. My life is a shit show. Maybe even for you, like other shit's going
Yeah.
on, like personal relationships with other people are just are falling by the wayside. And I've literally in this exact moment, I'm like, I think I had 5 or 7 people like sign up with me 1-to-1 here in this last like week, and I'm like, I don't even know if I have the
That's
time for
crazy.
myself, right? And I'm like, that's not, but
Yeah.
that's just like referral network. I'm like, dope, but I'm like thinking about it, and me and Seamus are having conversations about like where do we want to take things, because like the independent work and the 1-to-1 stuff does fill a great cup, but if there's so many of them, if it gets back to that, I mean, at one point I had 100 clients I was working with on top of like 100 patients I had to oversee. I'm like, I can't talk to 200 people in a week. It's impossible, or at least make it genuine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I quickly learned, yeah, the money was great, but like I'm losing myself in the work and not enjoying it. So I'm sure you probably feel that way too now, right? Like you're like these. Granted, I'm sure too, like your rate is much more significant than it used to be, so you don't need as many because you obviously have proof of concept, and that feels good. But like you can just say like focus on a core group of people, focus on your own community of people, and take it from there.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I think too, like, even from the business perspective, like whenever I was scaling, I mean, obviously money was a huge motivator, right? And for me too, like I've always been very big. Do you guys know Ramit Sethi? He wrote a book called "I Will Teach You to Be
Ah,
Rich."
love that book,
So
man.
he's
Love
like,
that book.
yeah, he's kind of OG. He's older, but like he's a super. He has this whole concept called money dials, right? Where basically like everyone has things that drive them, right?
Hmm.
Of like what they will spend money on, and I've kind of taken that concept and I've kind of turned it more into business. And I have this concept of like business styles, and I feel like most people are into business for like a primary reason and a second, or a primary reason and a secondary reason, and so there's like they're doing it for like power, which none of these are necessarily negative, but they're doing it because they like being in charge, they like power. There's like profit, right? Of like making money. There's purpose, like they love what they do and they feel like a purpose in doing it. And then the fifth or the fourth one's like freedom. I tried to use the word prosperity, so it's four P's if I ever like use it for some type of quiz or something. But freedom, right? And so I took a step back and I kind of recognized that like I think it's really easy when you're building a business. It can be the fitness industry or anything. To like this desire to like attach worth to your revenue streams or how much money you're
Yeah.
making, right? And I kind of just like realized that I mean I was building a business that was becoming more and more profitable, but I realized like what it required to become profitable was actively working against like actually my enjoyment of life, right? And what I actually wanted. And I kind of realized like for me at least, from an income perspective, like I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, everyone wants to make more than enough money, right? Like it's from a security standpoint and just an enjoyment of life standpoint, and having the ability to do things. But I've learned that for me, like what I really care about is not having to think about money because I don't necessarily, I'm not like, I don't really care about cars or watches or anything like that. Like, it's easy to get sucked into like the world of like attaching your value to how much you're making, especially if you're surrounded by a lot of like entrepreneurial people. But I
Right.
kind of realized that like for me, I like to make money, but to the point where it's like, no, not this constant stressor in my life. And beyond that, what really matters to me is like having the freedom of choice to do things. Like this Friday, like I'm going on a trip to Mexico for like 10 days, right? And like doing and staying on an Airbnb and I'll still kind of do working things. Like I realized like how important that was to me. And it's something that like I couldn't have necessarily done in the previous type of business I was building, right? Or at least like it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been like as just easy to just be like, I'm gonna leave in 3 days, right? Um, and so I think that like understanding like what you really want, and the problem is sometimes you don't know what you want until you realize what you don't want, which is the case for me. Is really important, not just for obviously being successful, but also like being able to provide the best product or service for the people who are going to be buying from you as well, right? Because if you're not
Mhm.
building something that you feel good about building in the way that you feel good about building it, then like it's going to show, right? And just your energy and how you show up and how you do things.
Yeah. Yeah. You make a great point. I love the Ramit Sethi stuff. I think this is why we're getting along so well. A lot of that Tim Ferriss stuff has shown up in my
Hmm.
life. I love the laptop on the beach kind of thing as well. Being able to
Yeah.
go to like I'll have like a Vegas trip. I bring my laptop with me, check in with some clients, and then kind of do the thing and move on. And still,
Yeah.
I like to work. I do. But I can still go on vacation at the same time. Like I had a trip last year. We went to Utah for like a week, checked in with some clients, sightseeing, love it. But the
Hmm.
Ramit Sethi thing, I love that. Like the whole health, there's a money style, there's a business style. That business style being, I love his explanation, and I think it's in the book Carter where he goes, I had this couple come up to me, and the wife is making so many remarks against her husband because he buys a $4 cup of coffee from Starbucks every single day, and he goes,
Hmm.
well, how much money do you guys make? She makes $350,000. He makes close to $600,000. Like he's a doctor and she's like an executive. And he goes, wait, you're telling me, I don't know the number for it, but like four times
Hmm.
30, like 125 bucks, $150 for coffee a month. She's getting mad about $150 a month for coffee, and they make well over $1 million. And the thing is, the question there goes, you have to go deeper. Well, how did you live your life when you were a child? Were you a child that like made, and they
Hmm.
realized she was a child that made food all the time. They made food in the house because they didn't want to waste money on food going out. So it was like a conflict of interest. So it's really funny how you have that. That's that money dial, the business style. Talk to me about Talk to us about the business stuff, because I know you are alluding to it in our conversation before, talking more about business per se. What does that look like right now? If you mind divulging into it, what is it about that business side that you love so
Yeah.
much? Is it the marketing? Is it the retention? Is it the scale and sustainability? Or is it more so like mentoring up and coming entrepreneurs or something like that?
Yeah, so I mean, so kind of going back to like, how I got started with this. Like, I've always been very interested in marketing. I think it comes more so from the interest in psychology because I'm very interested in like just like how marketing works and like the persuasion of things, which obviously can be like a bad word and stuff, but more so from the perspective of recognizing. And I think especially in the fitness industry, like there's the popular marketing saying, which is like tell people what they want to give them what they need, which I think gets used not in a good way. I think it's a way for some shady people to like justify their actions of how they do stuff, right? But I think that there's also real validity in it. And so I've always been interested in that, and I think it's why, like in the past, like I've done the one-on-one coaching, and again, I really love it. The problem is it's not necessarily scalable as a person of one, right? And I mean, scale used to be the goal; it's not anymore, which kind of shifts some of the goals. But I would say that like I mean I've gone down the path of like creating a good product that I feel good about and then focusing a lot on like the front end marketing of things, and I've gotten some things to work and some things to like not work as well, and I think I've just realized, and it may be I feel like there's been a shift to where like people really want that higher touch value, I think, in this industry, right? And I think too for the type of things that I'm offering, because it's one thing to like sell workouts and like you're hot and you just sell your workouts and people want to look like you, right? And you can make that happen. But I do talk so much about like the lifestyle side of things that I've just found that it really resonates more with people who do coaching itself. And so that's where for me, like I've kind of just stuck around and stuck with the coaching, and like my prices have changed a bit and like how I do things. But I feel like, I've gotten coaching, and my goal now is like I have coaching to where it feeds like the things I need to do in my life from like a survival standpoint and like a thriving standpoint. And my goal has always been to sort of buy back time and not necessarily make things automated, but like being really intentional with how I'm spending my time to where like there's still
Mm,
like a great service being offered. Um, but recently I've kind of pulled back from doing as many different um, sectors of fitness specifically, like the whole like me to like customers, the people who buy, and I've had a lot of interest in shifting more into like working with other people who are wanting to start their own companies. And now I know that there's I mean several of my friends have their own fitness business coaching companies and teach that, but I think that kind of going back to all the stuff we've talked about like lifestyle and like how you actually like what do you actually want to build and what actually matters to you, right? I feel like there's been a drop in like teaching people more of like a solopreneur type of an approach. There's another great book for you guys if you're interested. It's called Company of One.
mm,
And it Paul Jarvis, I think, is the author, but like he talks about like really getting to a point where you scale yourself as an individual and instead of necessarily always growing and honestly questioning growth at stages. And I feel like there's a large subset of like trainers, of people who are really passionate about fitness and helping people who are currently led to believe that the way forward is to like scale. Now you have to have assistant coaches. Now you're building out a sales team and you're doing this. And I think for some people that's the right move. But I think for a lot of coaches who are more so like passion first, like business second, there's like a missing like market there of like showing them how to like refine their own personal sort of systems, right? And like
yeah.
really, allowing them to still do what they love, but in a way that also allows them to honor their own time and be able to live their own lives too. And so that's been a shift that I've been moving into with my friend Matt McLeod. He does fitness coaching as well. He's kind of an OG in the space also, but he lives in Austin, Texas, here with me. We actually live in the same building. But that's something that we've been like wanting to dive into, and it's still very early on, but the whole goal of it is to sort of more target those people who like don't necessarily feel the desire to like grow a multi, figures, huge tiered business where they have employees and all these things, and allow them to do what they love, but do it in a much more um, sustainable sort of way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been on that path, right? Like I know Marcos has been as well, and but right now we're kind of, we're kind of figuring out how to not necessarily scale, but have the business in a way where it's like there are team players because I think Marcos and I are both like ready to leave that, right? Ready to leave that. But how would you say,
Hmm.
like, how would you identify that with someone like? Because for example, I know you had to go down that path, like you had to go all the way down. I kind of like the saying of like, hey, the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, right? But you decided to make your grass greener, but then you realized,
Yeah.
actually, I don't need it to be this shade of green. I think some coaches are told, hey, you need to have scale, you need to have systems, you need to have 7 assistant coaches, you need to have a sales team, you need to have the whole funnel going. And but then for them to realize, like at the end of that finish line, they're like, actually, this is not what I want. How do you identify that with someone that you're working with, or if that is something you're doing right now, like that's like actually that may not be what you really want.
Hmm.
Maybe is it really just this that you want? Do you get really clear with their goals? Like how does that process look like?
Yeah, and so I mean, like I said, I haven't necessarily had like I mean, I've mentored some people like behind the scenes more so, and that's definitely a
Yeah,
part of it. But I think honestly, so here's where I think this is what excites me and Matt specifically is
yeah,
that we don't need it to work, which is why we're excited to do it.
I love
And
that. I
so
love that.
like there's right, and that's why like and it's kind of how both of our and that's why we're excited to do it because like we sort of embody the kind of person that we want to work with, right? From our headspace. And I think that kind of like you said, and it's the same thing with I mean, there's so many parallels between business and fitness. I'm sure you guys know just from having these kind of conversations. But like of like sometimes it's somebody doesn't know like it's hard to build that like balance, I suppose, with like their body image and their fitness goals and their life goals until sort of they've reached different extremes. And so
Mm,
a lot of people who have reached out to me for help have kind of come from a space of like trying the other route and like realizing I don't know if this is for me or like it doesn't really bring me the happiness that I thought I needed, right? And so and because my biggest thing is this is like recognizing that there's no wrong path, right? It's not like the path that I would want to create for somebody is the right path, and anyone who's trying to scale is the wrong path, right? I think that's the right
yeah,
path for a lot of people, right? And so I think it's more of just like identifying that in yourself, and I think that the reality is, I think there's an element of like trusting your gut of what feels right, but then there's also the element of like sometimes you have to try something to figure out it's not what you want to, and so I'm sure that'll be like that'll be an ongoing like thing where if I'm talking with somebody I'm like, hey, what do you want? And they're like, I don't know what I want, and then kind of starting from there. But my goal has always been with it too of like it still can work even if like you do want to shift into scaling, it just may not be through how we want to do it. But I think that there's fundamental things that whether you're going to scale or not, you need to get in place, and just have created.
yeah,
And so I don't know. That's what excites me is getting somebody to a place where they have more of an understanding of themselves to be able to make that decision
yeah.
of how they want to kind of move forward with stuff.
No, I hear you. And I want to ask, and Marcos can follow up probably, is like, did you have to do a lot of, between the 7 coaches now where you're at, was there like a soul searching thing? Was there like a vision quest? Was there like,
An
was there like
ayahuasca
a moment
journey,
of,
Yeah,
you trip
yeah,
a
was
ball
there an
somewhere that
ayahuasca
you're
journey,
like
there was
psilocybin?
there were some ceremonies, if that's what we're asking.
Okay.
I think that yeah, I mean honestly, I think it's just been more of just like I mean in that process, I mean I went through some breakups and things, but I've honestly just reached that point where I mean, so I'm 28 now. I just think I had just like your very stereotypical midlife crisis of just like, and also too, like I've had this unique experience of I kind of started this before I even finished college. Um,
Mm,
so I think there's like an element of just like I think I was so excited about it and I had a lot of success. I mean, it took a year or two to have that success, but I had it. I had it very quickly, and I've been able to maintain it. And I think that that put me in circles with people who are also very driven, right, and who want to just scale, 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 and keep going up. And so I think for a while there's a lot of validation in being somebody who wanted to keep growing, and even in like my past relationship that I was in, like a lot of it was built around this idea of like growing together and like scaling and like becoming this like power couple thing, right? And so I think I had a lot of my identity that myself that I had created wrapped around this success.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself more and more, especially like in the past 3 years, like hitting these kind of, you know, rock bottoms, I would suppose, about like what I'm doing and where I'm spending my time. And I felt like I actually, the moment I kind of had this like eye opening moment was when I realized, I'm trying to remember exactly when it was, but basically I was asking myself this question of like, okay, if you took away your Instagram and you took away your business, like who are you? Right? What do you what is your life? And I was like, I literally don't know, right? Like
Oof.
where else do I spend my time and do these things? It was like kind of like a sobering good question to give myself. And it, you know, kind of took me down like a pretty like, you know, just like a uncomfortable personal development like journey, but obviously very necessary. And I think that like in doing that, I recognize that at least for the stage of my life, like having my entire life revolve around like who I am in a business sphere was like doing me more harm than good. And I realized I was just having fun. Like that was the biggest thing. Is like I wasn't like actually just enjoying my life. Like I felt like I was always thinking ahead for what I needed to do in business, and then I would grind every day, and I would, you know, pat myself on the back and said, "Good job, you worked hard today, and you got things done." And it's just there was just an element of just like actually experiencing this thing that we have right now, like just life, the 70 whatever years we have that I wasn't having, that made me really rethink how I wanted to approach where I spend my time in my career, because it's going to be a big part of my life forever. But also, if I have the opportunity to be more in the driver's seat of it and deciding like how much of it I really wanted to be a part of my life, then I'm going to do that. And so I've been very much acting more intentionally out of like less from a mindset of what's going to scale and what's going to grow versus like what's going to make me feel good more than anything
Mm.
else. And so far the experiment's been working pretty well.
Yeah, there's no validation, I think, like feeling self-validated. Like I'm
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with what I'm doing because it makes the most sense for where I'm at in my journey, much like all the clients we work with, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we have to reframe and reposition that mindset on a weekly basis typically to show them, hey, yeah, this week wasn't as good, but remember back in, 6 months ago when you were here,
Yeah.
and like it's just the constant reframing. And I mean, I mentioned this with like almost a business space, but and I think it was actually with Jared on our podcast. He mentioned I was like self auditing myself, right? Like doing these little like intentional checks with like finances and my family and everything else that's going on, and like doing that at least once a month. And he's like, dude, I was doing that on the hour. Like I was like, whoa, that's a little insane, Jared. I was like, that's a lot to like try to process, but really, really, it is like a big thing because we're all basically the same age here. I turned 30 in like 3 weeks. And
Mm.
I've been going through a similar kind of thing where like, and I think the reason why we'll say the higher powers that be pushed you off a couple weeks with like you fixing or giving you tech issues was to like, I swear, Seamus and I talk about this all the time. Everybody that comes on the podcast is like for a specific purpose. Like it
Mm-hmm.
reframes our level of thinking. And then other people, as they listen and rewatch episodes and they tell us, they're like, whoa, I really needed to hear that. It's like, go back and listen to it again, though. Like, listen again to something that Carter may have had to say and how it's changed in your perception of it is changing over time. And just like we want to build community, like that's our big thing. And Seamus is like, yeah, I like online. I was like, I don't really like online, quote, as much. I want to be like online as a vessel to help facilitate more people, but still go out and actually be with people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like the reason why you and Matt are probably going to pair together so well is that you get to spend time with one another in person, right?
Yeah.
Building this thing from the ground up and finding that niche of that B2B thing that you guys are looking for, which is really cool because you're like, here's where we're at. Like you just said, like it can fail, it could work. Who cares? Who knows, right? You're willing to
Yeah.
take the risk to have fun with it because you're like, I'm pretty good at this thing. You're really good at this thing. Let's see if there's a thing
Mm-hmm.
there, right? That's what
Yeah.
this whole project started as. Like, I want to talk to more people. I want to like have a way of commiserating about the issues I have with like some clients, or maybe I'm not getting to where they need to be. And how can I be a better coach? How can I learn? And how can I learn from Seamus and other people that come on? And it's kind of it's a cool journey. And I think it's just being patient, right? We're just never
Yeah.
patient enough though.
Yeah. Well, I think there's also too like it's also like in a way a very much a privilege too, right? I mean, because I also think too, because like anytime I've like talked about these things, like there's also the reality too, and I think that goes back to like what you were saying earlier. Seamus, is that right? Did I say that right?
Seamus, Seamus, yeah, it's Irish.
Seamus. Okay, Seamus. So I think like earlier, like whenever you were saying like, how do you know whenever what kind of business you want to build and things like that? Like, I mean, I think we're all like very fortunate that we get to be in a place where like we've had like some success and we know. And so like there's kind of an element of like to be in a place where you can make those decisions, I think is like it requires this journey of like, of grinding and getting and building the authority and building the audience too. And I think like maybe even going back to like, I mean, this is the first time I've even thought about it this way. I think it's almost been like reaching this point of recognition that like, oh, I can decide to do. It's almost like it's not from a place of fear or from a place of like worry that like things aren't going to work out, and more from a place of like I can make things work. So how do I want to make it work? And I think that
Hmm.
that's like um, a piece. And honestly, I've not talked to enough really successful people to know if a lot of people like do that. But I think it's really easy to stay stuck in like the the scarcity headspace with building businesses. And like I always question even people who are like wildly more successful than me, like why are you doing this? Is it really to like
Yeah.
to did you is it from a place of like love for yourself, or do you feel like you're trying to prove something over and over again, right? And I don't know, so it's always going to be a part of my life, but like I feel like I'm trying to really like shift out of that and be more in a place of like I don't need to prove anything to myself. I just want to do what feels right and where I feel I can give the best contribution. And so,
Yeah,
um,
How do
yeah.
you,
freaking
well,
love
Carter,
that.
how do you define success in your current state?
Yeah, that's a great question, and maybe I'll have a better question or better answer to the question like a year from now. But I would say honestly, right now, this is I this is literally actually like how I would define success. Is for me, it's a few things. Well, one is like being able to wake up and then decide what I want to do. Is like so it's that freedom aspect, right? Of like
Hmm.
not waking up and then it's like, okay, I got this power list I got to do, and I got to do all these things on this power list. It's more like waking up and then deciding. Um, and then I would also say too, like knowing that what I'm doing is actually providing real contribution to other people's lives. And I think in the fitness industry, obviously, we're very fortunate that like the things that we do really do get to help people, right? And I feel passionate about that. But then I think too, it's for me, it's just being able to put my attention where it needs to be put at any given time and not feel like I can't do something. So like, I mean, if for example my one of my best friends like calls me and like, hey, I'm going through like a major breakup, I'm like, it's like I'm really struggling right now, like being able to be like, hey, guess what I'm going to do for the next 2 hours, you and I are going to talk, and it doesn't matter what else I do, because like at the end of the day, like this is more important than like me making sure that like I get this post up that might, you know what I'm saying? And so I think it's for
Yeah.
me, I think success is being in a position where I could just I can decide to do with my time where I feel like it's best to enhance my own life, and along the way be able to add value to other people's lives, whether that's friends or it's clients or anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's a question I ask myself all the time. You mentioned an exercise that you did. I have a similar one where I'm like, if everything were to be taken away from me tomorrow, right? Like same idea. Like if my
Yeah.
Instagram was gone, I was like, if I lost my main source of income tomorrow, what would I do? And it's like I'm like my first question to myself is like, am I employable? Hell yeah, I'm employable because like I have these
Yeah.
different skills that I think have a tremendous amount of value. And hell, maybe they're not even being leveraged the proper way. I don't know. I'm so like I think sometimes we become so like practically narrow-minded because we've done something for so long and it's manifested such great things. And like you said, the choice and the opportunity to go pick out what we want to do. I get to work out 5 days a week, right? I take 2 days off where I can still
Yeah.
walk for an hour, hour and a half every morning. I get to drop my kids off at school. I get to be a present father. There's a lot of things I get to do that so many people are like, I don't even know where you find the time to do all the other stuff. And I was like, well, I'm intentional with my time. And I
Hmm.
really, again, always want to be doing things with intention. And
Yeah.
I think, it's you mentioning the difference of solopreneur and entrepreneur. that was a big thing that I forget who it was a couple podcasts ago kind of mentioned. And now that you brought it up again, I think it's like there's a reason is like there's pivotal points in everybody's life. What do we want to do? And again, I think what it really shows and what people can get out of that message is you need to try to do something on your own for yourself in a business scape, because you learn so much about yourself of what you do and do not want to do. Right. And whether it's producing as a team, are you a team player? Are you a person that needs to work alone? I feel like I've learned that of all the teams that I've been on, whether it was with the Daily Pursuit or with, IN3 or working with Jason Phillips back in the day, all those things showed me I need a team environment to truly thrive, but I need a team in a way that we're actually working collaboratively, not teams as they exist in nutrition coaching, which is very much so you're a solopreneur amidst your team.
Yep.
Yeah.
And no one wants to hand a client off to someone else, because that means money out of your pocket that now gets transferred over to somebody else, while the person at the helm can still be making money. And I'm sure that you felt a great deal of grief trying to move and transition people to the better fit coach, because then that coach feels dejected as a result of you doing what's best for the client ultimately. It's like, I'm sure that you're like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, if I can't work with somebody, hey, I can't work with you. We're not transitioning you over to another coach and then taking it.
That's what you just said at the end, I think, is something that, like, that's a great example, I think, of, like, again, because I think there are some people who are great bosses and can handle that situation the appropriate way to where, like, explaining things or whatever. But we were right. Whenever I was scaling that business, it was always like the fear of people dropping off and then coaches having less income and then having to manage that emotion. Again, it's something that a business owner has to do if they have employees. It's like the leadership skill, right? A skill of leadership there. But again, I think, people can learn it, but I also think it's a value of, like, that maybe was the point I was in. It was recognizing I either need to learn how to, like, be a better, like, leader in terms of owning this company, or I can make the decision of, like, maybe this is actually not the path that I wanted to take. And the reality, because I have options, should I listen to more of what feels right? I mean, it was a big conversation, because it's like, am I not like being driven because I don't want to, like, go to the next level? I mean, I go on Instagram and, like, Andy Frischel is yelling at me and saying I'm, pussy and I don't want to go to the next level or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's kind of like the whole idea, right, of it is like, am I just like, I don't have what it takes? Am I just like pussy, whatever? I don't know, whatever they would say I am. But then I think that for me, the big growth opportunity was just realizing, oh no, I think me not taking the path that feels right would make me more of whatever they said I was being, right? They probably agree too if you were talking to them one-on-one, right? But it's more, I just like to poke fun sometimes at, like, the business motivational people. It's actually going to be an angle for some of our marketing, is we're going to, like, joke and just say, like, if you're not sleeping 2 hours a night, if you're sleeping more than 2 hours a night, you're a fucking failure. Like, we kind of wanted to poke fun at it, but
no, it's so true.
But yeah, man, no, I completely agree.
You're right though. Like, so I listen to a lot of those things, and, like, while there's always a message you can extract, you're just like, I'm not being like, that's just not me, right? Like, it ultimately shouldn't and doesn't matter. But, like, again, you might find value in other things that Andy has to say when it comes to a particular question that he answers. You don't have to apply everything. You don't need
for sure.
Yeah, like,
for sure.
I mean, again, like, just like Huberman said, right? Huberman said blah. Like, I didn't.
No, seriously, like,
blah. Like,
this is
literally.
You didn't stare at the sun for 45 minutes today.
I
can't see right now.
I talk about this with, like, with my clients, because I grew up. I coach a group of men, right, Carter, and literally they ask me all these things, and I'm like, why are you asking this? Are you asking just because you want more information, or are you asking because you're actually implementing these things? And people will ask, and, like, I mean, these are some young guys, like 18, 20 to 20 years old. And they're like, well, I'm setting up my life so I can only sleep 4 hours a night because I want to do this, this, and this. I'm like, wait, what? Like, wait, they're like, I want to do this. I want to optimize so much that I'm like, this guy, I'm like, but your mission in life right now doesn't even ask you to do that. You can still, work your job, go to school, or do whatever you need to do and still get 8 hours of sleep. Why are you asking to only get 4 hours of sleep, or, like, trying to maximize this, Tim Ferriss it out like this, Huberman it like that? And it's like, just look at where you're at individually, and, like, whatever Frischel said, whatever Huberman said, it's like, does it pertain to my situation. And you know what? To be quite honest, just frank, I told Marcos this, I think recently. I've kind of been like on a information diet. Like I think I got to a point where I think I know. I'm always open to more information, and I'm like, we're on a course right now with Precision Nutrition. We're becoming health and wellness coaches, but also at the same time, it's like there comes a point where it's like they just keep a lot of this stuff is almost the same stuff over and over again. You're kind of like, I think we're good. I don't need to download 5-hour podcasts again. I think I've already done that. We'll do what we need to do.
Yeah. Well, I think like the constant pursuit of optimization is like a great way to not be optimal in your life, right? Because it's this constant chase, right? And so I couldn't agree more, man. It's like funny. I remember the moment I actually had this realization too was I used to live with one of my friends. His name was Trent McCloskey. He was big in the fitness space. He does more like marketing stuff now, but we we thought that in order to like succeed and to grow, we needed to like cheat like sleep. And so one night, like 11 p.m. or something, we both like neither of us had ever taken an Adderall before, and so we popped a 10 milligram instant Adderall, which if you've never done it before at the time, like, it was just like we were on the moon, and I stayed up from 10 p.m. until like 8 a.m. like filming like exercise videos. And I remember thinking like I just literally took Adderall and stayed up all night to record exercise videos for my health and fitness clients because it was like I wanted to grind while everyone else was asleep. And it was like this moment of just like, hold on a second. Do I need to do this? I don't know if this is
kind of missing the point, right?
Go on, but yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm doing the opposite of what I'm trying to teach right now, but it's addicting though. But I think but I do think it is a rite of passage, and I think especially for people who are motivated to start their own business, it's an unavoidable thing to want to like get ahead and like kind of like the unseen hours and that things. And I think there's value in it, and I think that there are personal traits that get developed during that period of like being able to show up when it's hard, whatever it is. But I think that, I think one of the goals maybe that I have in the future as I do start to maybe mentor more people from business perspective is help to shrink the timeline. Like, help create new perspective to where they can get from A to B faster than like maybe what it took me to do, right? Which I guess at the end of the day is really what coaching is in any capacity, right? Is shrinking the timeline of how long it's going to take.
Buying skills and buying time back. I mean, that's why you pay for a coach. Like you can do all this. Like it's Googleable. It's Chat GPT. It's Google Bard. Like, how do you lose weight? It'll say caloric deficit, hit your protein, train 3 times a week, whatever. It's the perfect plan. It's the perfect plan. But the problem with that is, right, like you still have to go research that. You got to tinker with it. You got to play with it. It's like, well, you can talk to Carter, who has hundreds of clients, thousands of clients, if anything, to have worked with, and he can get right to the point that you need to do. And here's the thing. I think Marcos mentioned this the other day. There's blind spots. Coaches will show you your blind spot because they're asking questions. AI won't ask you questions. You got to ask AI those questions. You got to ask Google those questions. It's like coaching makes you see. And I think when we were talking about like the self-development thing, I wanted to time in is that I did a fear setting exercise from Tim Ferriss this morning, actually, just while I was speaking with Marcos, and I realized what the fear setting told me, Carter, and I think you were alluding to this too, is how do you answer those questions that you're dealing with? It's not coming from a place of scarcity. It's not coming from a place of fear. And here's why, because you're not answering it from who you are right now. You have to answer it from who you will become in the future. And that version of Carter, that version of Seamus Marcos is abundant. It's coming from a place of thriving. It's coming from a place of, hey, we're good.
Yeah.
We can do it if we want to. We don't care if we have to. If it sinks or fails, great. If not, cool. And that's a place that I think Marcos and I are touching that place a little more often, and it's just it's a powerful place to be in for sure.
Yeah, dude.
No, man, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, the point in case being like we're 33 episodes deep. Our first goal was like 56 or 52.
Yeah,
and we're like, we're just gonna do it.
It's oddly specific. Is that like one a week?
Well, yeah,
it was 1 a week for a year.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 a week for a year was the goal. And now we do I think this week we literally we had 5 scheduled, but we only did 4 because someone had to, they actually got dumped and they're like, hey, sorry to break this on you, but we're like, we get it. Take time. It's all good.
I was super excited to have them on too. They're like a journalist. They write for the CrossFit Journal. They do all this stuff. And I was like, this is
Oh damn.
This is like it. This is
Yeah.
really cool, you know. And but unfortunately, hey,
Yeah, way smarter
like,
than me.
like,
Well,
there's
her
life that
niche,
happens.
her niche though is like
Yeah.
being a sex expert, but then she's also a journalist. It's like kind of a weird hybrid. So we're
Yeah.
really interested to dive into that. But it's kind of what Seamus was saying was like these uncomfortable, you know, like I want to write a book, and you can steal this, Carter, by all means. You're more fluent than I am in the current state. But like, you know, the guy who wrote the book Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. Have you ever heard
I've
that
heard
book?
of I've never read it though. I've heard of it though.
Just the title alone, right? Like, so I want something like Uncomfortable
Yeah.
Conversations, like in business or whatever that thing is, whatever that like insert
Yeah.
thing is, because it's through those uncomfortable conversations that the growth generally happens. And like you were mentioning in the beginning, was like, we're selling a service and there's nothing tangible to it except for people getting some value. Like they're obtaining
Mhm.
value, and they know that from past exposures, past people you've posted about, they too have had the value. It's like a really weird thing. Like
Mhm.
you're getting people to feel good about themselves. That's what we're all like health coaches at the end of the day. We're
Self
all just
love.
trying to
Yeah.
instill like this motivator
Mhm.
into people. And
Yeah.
shoot, I mean, just like you mentioned in the beginning, it was like coaches X's and O's. Hit your macros, do this, you're gonna lose weight, blah, it's easy. And then it's evolved. And I think for me, I mentioned this plenty of times on this, health has changed for so many people since COVID hit.
Yeah.
The introspective relationship with yourself, right? Existential crises are like probably at an all-time high. Shoot, dude, I was listening to, you know who Jelly Roll is? Like he's like up and coming
Oh, was that on
country.
the Rogan? Was he on Rogan
Yeah,
recently?
he was. So I'm like listening to that at the gym literally on Sunday morning. I'm crying. I'm like, why am I crying? Like,
Oh, now
it's
I
like
need
he
this.
just
Now I
hits,
need
he just
this.
hits, he hits some notes on about like, you know, he's like, shit, man, I was a young kid. Like, I didn't need to be in jail. I didn't need to be like incarcerated. I didn't need like a hard hand. I needed a fucking hug. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, and it hit me. I was like, oh, my moments with my kid, I need to be a little more tender. And it's just like, you hear, again, everything that happens, it's just so different depending on what hat you are currently fitting on your head, and your relation to yourself is always evolving. And those conversations now, we're having like a deep discussion right now, and then we have to go into a class, we're having these other like mock deep discussions. I'm like, yo, fuck a prompt like PN level 2, as
Yeah.
good as it is. Like, let's all just get
Mhm.
together and like, you know, actually go. Your case study is bringing in somebody else and doing it for free, like, because you're going to have those,
Yeah.
you know, approach the conversations with as if it's a new client. These role playing opportunities, while it's fine and dandy, I don't know, I'm like, I get to that at 4 p.m. and my empathy is gone, my social battery is dead, and I'm like, I don't need any more empathy for the day. I don't want to give anymore. I'm not that type of person. I'm a math guy, for fuck's sake. Like,
Yeah.
give me some
Yeah.
numbers. I'm
Hey,
good.
man, I'm exactly the same as you, man. But that's where I think, like, again, even like in the coaching space, like and I feel like the way the world is going to, like, I think coaching as it is now is going to continue to evolve to be more like, I think that at the end of the day, everyone's going to be in some way, shape, or form. At least like I think the coaches who are like successful in creating all the value, it's going to be some form of just like lifestyle coaching, regardless. Because I think that more and more, and I think this is more of like just like a human being perspective that I have on things. And I think especially as we shift more into technology and we shift more into like, you know, ChatGPT can build your whole workout program and you can do all these things. I think that the real value that's going to remain is like is the human to human connection and the experience, and probably the most cliche like personal development thing that I do as like a business person is like I have no problem. I've you know at any given point I'm like working with two people in two sectors of my life, right? Whether it's you know, therapy is a sector, or if like, you know, I recently invested in this real estate thing, right? Just and from like from this guy who, and the reason I signed up with him specifically had nothing to do with like what he does, but more about how he treated me in the whole process,
Yeah.
and like me
Yeah.
feeling like he understood my situation and like what I want to do. And it was like this, the first time I was ever like, oh my gosh, is I almost like learned from him of how I want to be whenever I'm approaching clients. It's like I
Yes.
want to feel everyone to feel the way this guy made me feel. And so I think like it's a, I mean, that's why I think anyone who's in the coaching space, I think it's a great space to be in from like a, I mean, even if you want to go down to the nitty gritty of like job security, because I think that there's this more and more, I think human beings, as we keep getting connected, especially through like the internet and things, it's like that one-on-one, like human component and of like getting advice and like that shrinking of the time, getting that perspective from someone you trust is going to get more and more valuable. Um, And so, but yeah, no,
No,
I agree with you. I can't remember exactly what I was replying
no,
to.
no.
But
That's poignant though,
No, it makes
because
sense.
like we actually had Mike Krausen on, and he does like
Mhm.
his whole thing was like conversations over applications, right? And so his model is about like you're using automation so that you can step in at the right time as a human, right? So literally you have these things going off at a cadence that you know your clients need, so that when they message back, you get that alert and you're ready to go. But how many times have you thought about sending a message to somebody and then it never happens? Probably countless.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's like, here's a way to circumvent that. They're in this thing, they have this tag. You've thought about what you need out of the person. Doesn't matter if it's the same message. At least then it's there. It's present, you know, and you can tell them
Yeah.
like, this thing is going to happen on a weekly basis for you. Respond to it so that I can get back to you. Tell me what's on your mind, and or go in and change the prompt. Right. Automations are only as good as what you're going to facilitate on your end as a coach.
Yep.
Mhm.
And so when we had him
Yeah.
on, I was like, yo, I love that, because I want more connection on a weekly basis with all my people. You know, what's the non-scale victory this week? You know, did you go out to eat? Did you have that social event?
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and listen to that one. That's a huge, because that's actually a big part of like what I think I shifted into was like, I call it like, it's like there's a much better word. I don't want to use the word conscious because it's so overused. I live in Austin, Texas, so it's so cliche for me to say the word conscious. But
Was
like,
it conscious
I think
coaching?
like genuine. Yeah, I'm a conscious life coach. Yeah. But I think that it's like more like compassionate automation of like
Yeah.
recognizing like I that aspect of like recognizing I'm one person, but like really it's like if you do that automation and stuff and use like whatever software, take advantage of like where we're at and the online coaching space and having that ability, but from a place of like actually doing it to get people to have conversations, there's a lot of power in that. It's actually something like that's what I feel like has allowed me this time to like work with clients in a way that it's just a way better experience. And they even know these are automated messages, but and I tell, because I'm like, hey, you're going to get these messages, but I'm putting them there because I want to know, because you might not tell me. And like, and I'd be honest, I'm like, listen, I might not see it. Right. And so I want you to share these things. And so I love that you brought that up, because I think like that's a great evolution of like really providing a great service is like giving people opportunity to share. Right.
Yeah. 100%.
and I can't even tell you, the biggest thing is like their software isn't cheap, right? But it comes with coaching. So I have a coaching call right now with his team after he didn't even do a sales pitch on me. He came on, he just gave value.
That was the
talked about
pitch.
like his view, and it was the sales pitch. Effectively.
Little do you know, this was him doing a free consult.
He was the one that basically broke down what a niche was to us, and I've heard the word niche like a billion times, but he explained it in such a way that I was like, I need to work with you, and we're working with him, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it was just so, again, it was so direct. I think obviously it showed that he's seasoned. He's done fitness. He's had a successful coffee business too. And then now the cool thing is that when you're being coached by them, they're using their own software to do the exact same thing. And I'm like, okay, like I can't make this Facebook like live group that's part of like that text stream. Like that's the one that reminds of like all the group calls, right? Cool. I understand that. Yeah. I know it's automated, but the one that's specifically with the coach who's helping me, there's the automation part of like, hey, we got your call tomorrow's at noon. Your call's in 10 minutes. Here's the link. Boom, boom, boom. It's just making sure that I'm going to show up for myself, which I then do. It's obviously in my calendar as well. But then the other thing is it's showing me the power of like that I'm getting that alert. If it was an email, fuck off. Like it's not getting to me. And that was like the biggest thing is like, in coaching, when we were doing a model, it was all like Loom based videos. It was like people were saying, oh, I didn't get the video. Or, when the person watched it, it's like, oh, they watched it like 10 minutes before they're sending the next check-in. How do you expect to do anything in that week if you're getting back to me like that? And then I couldn't stay up on it because there was too many people. And that was like the issue with me in scalability was like, I wasn't being able to like connect at that level. So I literally moved all those people in my transitioning phase back to phone calls. Because I'm like, that's the easiest way to know they're going to go apply this thing. I can send them a Cliff Note version of what I just said. And I think it's just an evolution. You start realizing where you can use technology best to facilitate your style of coaching, which is really cool. But I'm glad I've learned that. It sounds like you've learned that, like through Hell and High Water at a different role. I don't know if I ever want coaches like that under me, but maybe one day so I can have that similar experience.
Well, we'll see. I've definitely been a hot head coach.
I will say this. there was nothing more valuable though than like the one thing that made it the hardest to break it off, because like it was a great process, and like they retained their clients and I gave them all the tools. It basically shifted from like I'm your boss to like now I'm your mentor for this time period of time, right? I will say this though, if you ever do get into that world, and this is probably the thing that was the hardest to give up, was there is a lot of value in like being able to create a lifestyle for somebody to where like they can make a great living doing something that they enjoy in that capacity, right? Like actually,
Yeah.
it was maybe even if it was like a, my own ego, right? But I still feel like there's just a value of like, oh wow, this person, I'm helping this person do this. I will say I missed the aspect of that, but maybe that's maybe what I'm shifting more into with this next venture, is being able to help people do that without, my own personal, stress of having it too. But yeah, I'm all for the systems. What was that guy's name again though? I want to look him
Mike,
up 'cause
Mike,
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 I'm
Mike
all about
Krausen.
like, yeah,
Mike Krausen.
Mike Krausen. Okay.
Yeah,
Conversations over
WSON. Yeah.
what is it? Conversations over applications.
Yeah, I think that's his
Yeah.
Instagram
And
title.
what I love about him is he's real, he's raw. He's been in that industry, like how we were like personal training on the floor, was a fitness physique guy, does jujitsu, like kind of everything that like he's been through the ringer, he's been through the grind. He's started multiple companies. I believe he was co-founder of Rise Supplements as well. And the thing about
Oh,
it is
wow.
like the thing about it is like, okay, he's been there, done that. But what I love about it is he's still there doing that and then showing it. So he is, definitely being a mentor. But Carter, I just did look at our time and it is up to an hour. I do want to just say, hey, is there any last kind of thoughts that you've had? I know I've been enjoying this conversation, but I want to be respectful of your time. Maybe we could get you for a second, because I know conversations like this are conscious conversations, right? What I'd love
very
to ask
conscious.
is,
Yeah. Rename the podcast.
any last like game thoughts, anything you're excited about that you're excited about, or anything, where people can find you or anything like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm definitely excited about this like new venture. I mean, I'm definitely doing a unprompted drop of just the idea of it, and so me and Matt are actually hanging out later. So I'll be like, hey, by the way, we kind of have to do this now because I kind of talked about it. And so, but I would say, yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to like, obviously like just like follow me along on this journey, like Carter on Instagram is my biggest place, and I'm actually like shifting now more into like my goal is to shift more into being more like actually less fitnessy, more sharing myself and talking about some of these other things as I shift into this. And so I would say that, and then maybe like a last kind of remark is that like because I'm assuming just based on our conversation, there's a lot of different types of people who might listen to this, whether they're like aspiring trainers or in the fitness. I think there's a lot of value in just like, and it's so easy to say this, but even if this just plants a seed that you can maybe remember at certain points of your life, is like just to remember that like you can like trust yourself and where you're going, and like whether that's if you have a passion, you're motivated, and like you can get there, but like also remembering that like the best path forward is like what feels right for you, and like just to trust your gut more, right? I think that some people could trust their gut too much, but like don't always think that there's like one path of how you have to get somewhere in whatever realm it is, and like be willing to like sit with yourself and maybe have those check-ins, maybe not every hour, but like having that weekly check-in and being genuine about it, and like actually like sitting down and deciding, do I feel good right now? Because even if it's going to make you more money or get you leaner faster or whatever it is, like, do you feel good about it, right? Because at the end of the day, like I think that's really what life is about, is like just feeling good, right? And feeling good about where you're spending your time and how you're growing into things. So
yeah, sometimes growth is being able to live in a phase of maintenance, which we all really suck at, right?
That's it. Yeah.
And it's
you said it much more prettier. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm living it, because it's identifying when and how to strike is something that takes a lot of maturity to get to. And I keep joking about this, but I'm still firmly believing it. My best composition will probably come in 5 years from now, as my kids are. Again, there's going to be still activities that I'm going to have to do with them, but life will be easier maybe for myself, because they can bathe themselves. They can do things that don't require me 100%.
Yeah.
And I now know, because of the habits I'm working on currently, much like people we work with, it's an exponential effect, right? It may be incrementally increasing right now. We're not seeing what's happening, and then the hockey stick goes, and you're like, boom, right? And so I'm like, I know I have such a solid foundation. I'm really happy with everything that's going on. I'm sure you feel the same way. I know Seamus does. And then when when the stars are aligning, when things free up, things will be really good. So I think that I think your guys' venture is going to be really cool to see. I think people will get a tremendous amount of value because you've lived it. You've done it. You built it. You've done it. And throw it. Not that you threw it away, but you decided it wasn't right. So you're going to be able to be the mentor people need. And most people don't realize how much a mentor really is the cheat code to success in a far shorter, like you just said, shortening the gap between A and B, right? And hey, like I made this mistake. Do you want to and sometimes you might learn in your coaching style. They gotta learn themselves. They need their own anecdotal experience. They can't just trust everything you say. And I think that's where coaching is so cool because there's so many people. I mean, realistically, I look back to, ironically enough, Conscious Coaching by Brett Bartholomew, right? Seamus.
Yeah.
And
Big mentor of ours and all that.
He was the one who inspired me to realize I need to be a better speaker. I need to think about these things. I need to practice this. And, so indirectly working with him right now is us doing this podcast because we have to listen to ourselves and, too many ums, too many likes, too many buts. And it's really cool. So, guys, we appreciate you listening. And we thank Carter again for being on the podcast today. We hope you guys got a lot of value out of it. I know I did. I didn't get to ask the question about content and the creation of that and how you were able to do it at scale, but maybe we can get you back and talk about that part of the journey in a future time. So we'll have everything linked below. Please subscribe, save, do whatever it is you need to do on whatever social channel you're on. We would greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.